Hello, I'm Hannah Kaplan, and this is the WCS Wild Audio Podcast, where you'll find reported audio stories covering the latest news and newsmakers from the Wildlife Conservation Society's Global Conservation Program, Zoos and Aquarium, and their many partners. We've got a great show today, so let's get to it. The 300,000-hectare Karukinka Natural Park was created in 2004 after land in Chilean Tierra del Fuego was donated to the Wildlife Conservation Society by Goldman Sachs. As the park celebrates its 20th anniversary, we begin a two-part series on how its establishment helped to spur both the development of an ambitious WCS country program in Chile and an expansion of the country's environmental conservation efforts. Nat Moss has this report.
As the long-serving country director of the WCS Chile program, Bárbara Saavedra still marvels at the natural riches of this conservation gem at the tip of South America.
In Karukinka, there are the largest and best conserved stands of template forest in the Southern Hemisphere that exist at that latitude. And they are intermixed with pristine and high integrity peatlands. Here, we have one of the most important population of guanacos, for example. The southernmost and best conserved populations of condors are in this place. So the biodiversity value of the place is unique. The carbon value of this place also is amazing because we have massive amounts of carbon that is contained in these ecosystems, and that is a very strong and significant contribution to climate mitigation that we are providing to the world from this region.
When Bárbara Saavedra helped to establish the WCS Chile program 2 decades ago, it was largely indistinguishable from this extraordinary new parcel of land that WCS had recently acquired as a gift from the investment bank Goldman Sachs.
Before WCS got the property, there were no WCS Chile program. There were some very small projects, but in 2004, when WCS got the land donation, they decided to broaden WCS presence in Patagonia, and we started the Chile program. And everything within the Chile program in the beginning, and still today, it was designed and linked to Karukinka.
Back in 2004, Bárbara worked out of an office in the nation's capital far to the north.
Chile is a highly centralized country, and our capital city, Santiago, is 3,000 kilometers away from Karukinka. 80% of our population lives in the central part of the country without even knowing anything about Tierra del Fuego. So we established an office in Punta Arenas, the closest city to Tierra del Fuego, and also an office in Santiago, where I was based. In the beginning, I was by myself.
At the time, the Chilean government was not effectively engaged in the protection of nature and biodiversity.
When we started with the project, we didn't even have a Ministry of Environment. Different aspects of biodiversity were overseen by different ministries, and there was a complete lack of integration and coherence between these public agencies. We, along the years, have been able to connect with all the different agencies that are related directly or indirectly with our work, and at the same time, providing support for the creation for the country of a Ministry of Environment.
One of the most important priorities of WCS's conservation work in Karukinka is the protection of its vast peatlands, which store over 200 million tons of CO2.
When we acquired the park, one of the main threats for peatlands was the possibility of them being mined.
Melissa Carmody is the current director of the Karukinka Natural Park.
Until a few years ago, the peat was under the mining law. Therefore, those rights did not belong to the owner of the property. So we managed to declare Karukinka as an area of scientific interest, which put the national priorities of science over mining. That was a big conservation achievement.
Bárbara expands on what that declaration has managed to achieve for peatland protection.
We created the Patagonia Peatland Initiative, following the steps of the Global Peatland Initiative from UN, And we got together all peatland people in Patagonia, both Chile and Argentina. And we are now establishing this group, the local and binational group, to promote the conservation, the effective conservation of Patagonian peatlands.
Another critical focus has been the control of beavers, an invasive species that was introduced from Canada into Fagnano Lake in the Argentinian side of Tierra del Fuego half a century ago in a misguided effort to create a market for fur. It was only a matter of time before the beavers found their way to present-day Karukinka. WCS Ranger Rodrigo Munzenmayer explains.
This lake, the Fagnano Lake, is a binational lake, so it is part in Chile and the other part is in Argentina. So beavers crossed to Chile around the 60s, and the population started to grow, and it hasn't stopped growing. Now we say that almost every stream in Tierra del Fuego, every water body is populated with beavers. And there's no predators in Tierra del Fuego, so there's nothing controlling the beavers population naturally.
Karukinka means our land in the language of the indigenous Selknam people, who occupied present-day Karukinka for some 10,000 years before the arrival of Europeans. According to Melissa, most of the Selknam people perished at that time, killed either at the hands of colonial forces or from disease. But a small number of individuals survived to be educated in missions or sent to live with families in Punta Arenas or elsewhere. Today, there are about 150 people, representing 11 families, who trace their lineage back to the original Selknam. Melissa says that most Chileans have only recently become aware of them.
We were taught at school that Selknams had gone extinct. And it wasn't until 2017-18 when we met descendants from the Selknam people for the first time. And of course, that completely changed our way of not only looking at history, but also looking at our own jobs and at our own park. We have always really respected and treasured Karukinka because of that cultural heritage. We've been, in the last 6 years, reconnecting with the Selknam people, which were as well reconnecting with each other and with the territory.
Bárbara Saavedra notes that since the establishment of Chile's environmental ministry, WCS has continued to work with the country to expand its commitment to biodiversity protection.
That ministry wasn't created with a specific agency mandated to conserve biodiversity. Since then, with other members of our society, other NGOs, people from the academia, we strongly supported the creation of a national biodiversity and protected areas agency that finally was created in 2022, several years after the creation of the Ministry of Environment.
And a newer public-private partnership is helping to provide additional funding for conservation.
One of the things that was part of our DNA was the creation of the National Chilean Fund for Biodiversity. And that is a new institution. It is a public-private institution, but we strongly promote it. It took us several years to do that. And we expect that institution can help bridging a huge, humongous conservation finance gap that exists in Chile. And this is part of what we have been promoting since we arrived.
As Karukinka turns 20, the WCS Chile staff is reflective about what they've accomplished. As director of the park, Melissa Carmody surveys their work with pride.
We have been capable of sustaining over these 20 years a very highly committed team and professional team of park rangers, scientists, collaborators, linkages with the community and with the authorities, local, national. So I think that's part of this model that we have been able to strengthen over the years.
Rodrigo Munzenmayer expands on this theme.
Karukinka is like a classroom for people to understand nature locally, globally. And we, the rangers here, have this important role that we talk directly to people, and we have this important mission of communicate what conservation means, not just here in Tierra del Fuego, but also in Chile.
One special source of pride is the degree to which Barbara has been able to promote the leadership of women in her program since the creation of Karukinka.
I've been strongly supportive to include women in our program. And we were pioneers in that at different levels. We were the first ones to get 2 women park rangers in Tierra del Fuego. And since then, we have managed to hire women park rangers until today, and improving and having them having more responsibilities. And we have been promoting the establishment of a group of marine women in the Magallanes region, because they are a very important part of the protection of the coast and the management of our marine resources, but they have been invisible for the laws and for the investments of the country. And also it's a mandate. It is a global mandate. It is the goal number 23 of the new biodiversity framework.
Barbara highlights the number of women leading WCS's work across Latin America.
When I look up to my colleagues in other parts of the region, I see Mariana Varese, I see Mariana Montoya, I see Lilian Painter, I see Maria del Carmen Fleitas, and Catalina Gutierrez, of course. So we are a very strong force. I mean, when Melissa wanted to go to Karukinka and lead the project, I was super happy because she was at that time the only woman in Chile leading a conservation program this size.
For her own part, Melissa appreciates Barbara's support and confidence.
The job there is not easy, and it's a world still dominated by men in general, not in Karukinka in particular, but in general in what happens in that territory, in what they face with tour operators and fishermen and cattle ranchers, and it's dominated by men. So I think this strength and vision from Barbara has gone down the ladder of our team, and we are all super aware and super proud of what we have accomplished on gender equity.
Looking ahead to the next 20 years, she foresees continued progress on conservation in Chile that can inspire other countries and regions in their own efforts.
We envision for the next decade or 2 decades, Karukinka as strengthening its role as a conservation model for other protected areas, that we can connect Karukinka more strongly with neighboring marine and terrestrial protected areas, and not only have a geographical network installed, but also a learning network within park rangers, park managers, the community, and of course, the Selknam people being able to take part of that leadership and use their vision as well for conservation.
Next time, we look at the deal through which WCS acquired this extraordinary parcel for conservation from Goldman Sachs. For WCS Wild Audio, this is Nat Moss.
Today's episode was produced and reported by Nat Moss, with help from Hannah Kaplan and Dan Rosen. The WCS Wild Audio podcast is a production of the Wildlife Conservation Society. Please join us next week for a new episode, and don't forget to rate or review the show wherever you get your podcast.